Welcome to InDigital Insights. Monique Manach and Dejnakos, Kidikanik and Anishinabek and Dojiba. My name is Monique Manach, and I'm a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake. And our conversation today is with Jules Koostachin. And Jules is a member of the Attawapiskat First Nation. She's a brilliant filmmaker, poet, writer, director, mom, and PhD. She's amazing and incredible, and I really look forward to this conversation. So I'd like to start with storytelling. Um,
Mm.
how like how did you come to this? Where did your path start? I guess.
I think for me, living in both Ottawa and then Moosonee with my grandparents, you're exposed to like ancient storytelling, I like to call it, or ceremonial storytelling, or I don't know, I just feel like it's part of my DNA, when you're raised with it and your grandparents and your aunties and your uncles, like I don't know, it's just part of your day to day life, and you look forward to people gathering and having tea and sharing stories. There's a difference between like our everyday stories and then there's the sacred ceremonial stories. And we know that comes with like protocol and everything else. But I've just always been really fascinated about um, protocols and process when sharing stories as a filmmaker, even during my academic years doing my PhD, I was also really, really focused on documentary as a form of orality, like as an archive. I don't know. I guess I'm just always been a nerd that way. I don't know. Part of who we are as Cree people, as Indigenous people, storytelling is kind of theory in a way. It's how we practice who we are, share our knowledge. It's like second nature or first nature, right? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I found the same thing growing up. That the stories it was always all about. That's how we were taught is through that
Yeah.
stories. And that's that's where you find the richest uh, elements of the culture.
Yeah, for sure.
When you were saying protocols, what kind of protocols did you find?
I think it differs everywhere you go, right? Like right now, I'm on Coast Salish lands, and they have different protocols in terms of sharing story and their practices, and everything else, as we do as Cree people, you know, on the eastern part of Canada or Turtle Island, right? I think everything is informed by the landscape, the language, ancestral ways, the way we see ourselves, the way we conduct ourselves. I think everything comes into play when we think about protocols. I think for me as a filmmaker, when I work with different communities, I take their lead. I try to find out what it is that they think is important, as opposed to me kind of, you know, influencing the way production should be. I've gone into the interior of BC, on the coast of BC. I've been in Saskatchewan and Alberta. There's just different ways of doing things. And for the most part, they will tell you how things are done before you even turn the camera on. And that's basically following protocol, right? Like, I'm not going to go in there and tell people how to do things, especially if it's not my territory or land, right? So I think that's the big thing when we think about protocols and processes. Everybody's the authority in their own life, communities, and so forth. So, as an Indigenous person, just making sure that we have that awareness and understanding before proceeding with our work, And as you know, as an academic yourself, Indigenous folks are the most researched, so we know what it feels like for people to come in and extract and take, and there's not a lot of reciprocity. So, that's kind of what I think is really important is how do we give back as opposed to taking, right? And making sure that people don't feel that they're not getting something in return,
Mhm.
but we do research and so forth, right?
That's exactly it. Whenever I'm working with students or anything, I always tell them if you're going to work with the Indigenous community, understand that you're creating a relationship and that these
Yeah.
relationships go above and beyond whatever research you're doing. Don't
Hmm.
expect to just go in. And if that's what you're going to do, don't do that research.
Yeah.
Work on a different, there's so many things people can research, but understand that you're building a relationship and that relationship should continue. in
Yeah,
your lives.
you should
And
be able to. Right.
yeah, absolutely, it has to be reciprocal. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we in my community, I'm Algonquin. We're sort of neighbors, and my son is Moose Cree, so
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah. And we I could be gifted a story that I could tell, but it's not something that I can release to outside of the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, like I may have, I do sometimes workshops in schools and I'll tell a story. And then I've had teachers come to me afterwards and say, "Oh, this is wonderful. Can we take your creation story and make puppets?" And I'm like, no, no, sorry.
Well, at least they.
At
Oh,
least they asked. Well, yeah, because they wanted the story, because of course they didn't remember it.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's the same wherever. I remember being in Moose Factory, and absolutely all the programming was what does the community want? What do the people want? What, you know, and even the programming and the training, like what, you know, I was so um, I because I had family there, and you know they knew I was coming up and opening a center, um, and one day this young lad appeared at my door, and he said, "Well, they said you're doing media training, and so I want to do media training, and my parents said I could come over," and I'm like, "Wonderful!" They trusted me. You
Right.
know?
Go up at the door.
And come in quickly before you know, before you change your mind.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. I spent the last few days kind of taking a look at all the different films that you've made, and they're so personal. And I
Yeah.
just, I love that. I just, like, I've spent a long time creating space for people to make films. Always sort of, I worked for the CBC once,
Mm-hmm.
and during that time, I was told I wasn't allowed to do like bring up Indigenous story ideas, or I was a PA, like a, you know, just I did the pre-interviews. I was, you know, basic a glorified secretary, but I couldn't do anything around Indigenous anything because
Mm.
I was told I was subjective. But when I asked about women's issues, they were like, "Yeah, that's fine."
Hmm. Interesting.
And yeah, it was the early 90s, right? It was just, you know, well, I have to thank them because of that, I started working in training and, um, you know, creating space for Indigenous voices. Because if I hadn't have had that experience, I may never have, you know, um, but it was, um, it was after that, like that, you know, starting to work with the youth and work um, with the Indigenous community to create those voices. Um, and that you know, I always made sure to tell them you can tell say whatever story you want. But I always found in my own, like I was still impacted by that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And how did you did you face that? How did you deal
I
with it?
think, um, like I've always been taught that before you tell the stories of others, you have to know your own story first, or be able to tell your own story first. And I think that is something that has stuck with me, is that, you know, understand the vulnerabilities of being in a film, right? Like, you know, there's documentary film, and I was the subject of a film called Jingle Dress. And I remember getting really close to the director and then feeling like, you know, just forgetting that the camera's rolling, you know. And I think that is a very big lesson as a filmmaker too, is that people start to build trust. But I think it's also important to have kind of guidelines or self guidelines in terms of your method, and making sure you're going back to people saying, are you okay with me sharing this? Because once it's, you know, disseminated, it's out there in the world, like it is, you know, and we have no real control over bringing it back in. So I think, you know, there's a lot of things about sharing personal stories. I'm the one who's in charge. I'm a key creative. I can go back and change things or pull back or put more in, you know, like I'm the one who's making those decisions. I think when I tell personal stories of family members, part of my methodology is making sure that they're okay with that or what I'm sharing, and then they have a say, because sometimes people change their mind, right? But you want to do that before you go further into the edit. Because otherwise you're going to be in post-production forever if you don't get a yes from everyone.
Yeah.
um, the other thing is I want to make sure that if I have subjects or guests in my films and my documentary or my projects or research, that they understand what they're signing up for. You know, I was up in a Inuit community like a long time ago, and I had release forms, and I was just filming and stuff, and I wasn't really going to do anything with it. I was just thought I would film my son who was up there doing some, a speaker thing or presentation, and this old man, he just signed with an X, and he didn't speak English, and I thought, oh my gosh, this just feels terrible. you know, I don't think he fully understands or can read English. And here he is signing with an X. And I'm like, okay, we need to have a translator to let him know what he's actually signing. What is he actually, you know, what's that? So, but I had the awareness somebody else would have come in and just, who cares? He signed it, right? I have exclusive rights. I can do whatever I want with this content. But I think when you're part of a community, the stakes are higher for us because we're the ones that have to go back. When people are outside of the community, they can just take and walk away. There's no accountability there. But for us as Indigenous researchers or filmmakers or storytellers, there is an obligation to do things right. So I don't know, telling personal stories again, I feel like I'm comfortable because I'm the one who's kind of responsible for the edit as well, right? So, and I also think being a mom, I call some of my work like ceremonial work or cultural work because I'm trying to document something that is happening in real time, like a ceremony, like when my boys cut their hair for the first time, the placenta ceremony, all those things, because I want to keep some sort of archive or create some sort of archive for future generations,
Mhm.
because we don't want to forget. I don't think our kids want to forget or their grandkids or whatever, right? We want to find ways to sustain ourselves. So film is a great way to do that. Scholarship's a good way to do that. We have more and more Indigenous scholars that are publishing. So I feel like that is a way to kind of keep us alive, if that makes sense, in the collective memory of things, that we're not the vanishing race that think to contribute. We're here today.
Exactly. I mean, I think about it now. I do the same thing. Well, she's gone now. I had a cousin that I would try to videotape or record any chance anytime I could. I was there with the camera or with the tape recorder, something. And I think about now, like if only we had that of my grandparents. Or my grand, like I'd love to hear their voices again. Or some people are not in favor of recording the old ones simply because they say that we're interfering with the relationship between them and the youth.
Mm,
We're supposed to be teaching the youth, and that interferes with that. But on the other hand, our societies aren't what they were before.
exactly. Yeah.
And this is a way that we can make sure the youth get these teachings.
Hmm.
You know,
The best we can do sometimes, right?
exactly. Yeah. And in my
Yeah.
community in Rapid Lake, the kids still have to leave to go to high school.
Wow.
So at 12 and 13, and high school starts in grade 7 in Quebec.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at 12, 13 years old, these kids are leaving. And
Mhm.
sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
they come back. And sometimes, there's a very low graduation rate,
Yeah.
and so they don't get that kind of relationship building
Yeah.
with the grandparents that
But I also think we kind of have a responsibility um, to kind of record because of what you're saying, because there's been so much change that, there is this kind of desperation. We're seeing how media or kids are just so distracted, and then maybe they're losing interest. I don't know. But I don't know, when I go back up north, I see that the TV's blaring and I see the old ones sitting in the back and the young kids, like, there's a lot of change, unless we make an effort to put people in the same room at camp or something. I don't know. There's got to be an intentional act, I think, to make change like that. Otherwise, in people's homes, the kids aren't talking to the grandparents. The TV's blasting. They're on the internet. They're playing video games,
Mhm.
and that is how our things are changing, right? So how do we adapt, right?
Exactly. The language retention in my community actually wasn't too bad until the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the internet came in and it was all in English, the little ones weren't getting, that's where a lot of that, yeah, the kids are on their phones, they're on the computer, they're on whatever, and the grandparents, so they weren't getting the language the way. I mean, they started doing immersion until grade 4,
Right.
because I think the curriculum after grade 4 is I won't say monitored, but it's standardized by the province, so they can't. But
Right.
but
Yeah.
other than that, yeah.
It's a fine line, right? You want to sustain and reclaim and do all this important work, but then you want to make sure you're following protocol, but then you're like seeing in front of your face going, okay, there is something divisive happening here. How do we bring people back together? Like, I don't know. I think we're just constantly in this place of having to adapt.
Mhm.
And then how do, we get to a place, do we use apps? Do we use media? Do we, it's just like, but I also think too, and I think this is a big thing, is just seeing that our elders and knowledge keepers are also the authority in their own kind of keeping of stories, right? So they'll tell us if they want us to record, they're going to tell us to record.
Yeah.
If they don't want to be recorded, they're grown-ups, they're adults, they'll tell us, record me or don't record. And like
Yeah.
they're the authority too in their own lives, so I'm sure there's no issue in them kind of leading us, right? That's the other part of it.
Yeah, my cousin Mary loved being in front of the camera, but
Hmm.
she was funny. Oh man, she was funny. But
Yeah.
her sister wouldn't be recorded by the camera, but was okay with audio recording.
Oh, see, yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, people have their kind of own way, right? So just to be respectful of that, I guess. And our elders, like I know my grandparents have been gone for a while. That generation only spoke Cree, didn't engage with a TV, didn't really have a TV in the house. Our elders now are like my mom. She's got her 90-day fiance on in the background 24/7. You know what I mean? So it's like kind of situation or environment, right? So, yeah.
It was like that too. My grandparents didn't own a TV. I don't think they ever owned a TV, and they
Yeah.
spoke the language. My dad spoke the language, and so did his siblings.
Hmm.
But they went to residential school, and I remember there was a big fight in the family because some of the younger ones weren't keeping the language, and the older ones were like, no matter what, you keep the language. There was this, but there was a big age gap too between the older ones and a couple, the last couple of the younger ones,
Yeah.
and but none of them taught their kids. We were never taught the language.
Yeah.
Everybody agreed that it would be better. We would be better off without it.
I know. And then here it is, this huge void. Right. Yeah, that's how colonization works, I guess.
Yeah,
It's all colonized, right? You'll be
exactly.
better off without knowing who you are if you're similar. But
Exactly.
that's essential school, right? It you know carried forward, sadly.
Mhm.
So
But
yeah,
I don't know. I think that we can use media to reach the kids. Um,
yeah,
one of the things we're working on is an Algonquin language video game where we use the prefixes and the suffixes of a word. It's a narrative. It's a story, and you're given a word, and then you have to find the prefixes and the suffixes to move yourself forward in the story.
nice.
Yeah, so it's engaging with the language as opposed to being made to memorize it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a story.
yeah. Experiential, I think, is the key, right? Like, I think if any of us went to an all Cree community where no one spoke English, and if we were there for like 2 years and living the life and helping the elders, I mean, would pick up the language as opposed to sitting in a classroom it's a little bit more difficult, right? Because you're not experiencing it. You're remembering or memorizing, and it's a little bit different. But if you're putting it into practice, your body kind of remembers it too, if that makes sense.
It's absolute. I mean, I took French from the time I was in grade 3 right through to college, and nope.
Yeah.
Just nope. I mean, a few words. I can make it through a cashier, like at the grocery store.
Yeah.
That's it. But I
Yeah.
remember Mary saying to me, "And give me 3 months. You come live with me in the bush for 3 months, and I'll make you fluent."
Yeah. And that's what and I believe that, right? I wholeheartedly believe that. I think that is absolutely true. You know, yeah. You have to experience it. It has to be something that you witness and are a part of. I
Mhm.
think with our generation, my mom's a speaker as well, and I always kind of equate it to being invited in the circle. I was not invited in that circle, right? Like we heard them talking, we heard them conversing and laughing and sharing stories. I can understand Cree, but me trying to put a sentence together is like I just can't do it, right? But then I think again, I've been in Cree classes where non-Indigenous people have picked up the language really quick, but there's no trauma attached to that, right? So when we're not invited to the circle, we remember that feeling of not being invited. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that needs to happen. I think ceremony. I know for the Crees, like we have the walkout ceremony. Maybe that walkout ceremony is a part of the something that we need to revisit so we can remember our languages again. Maybe we go back into that lodge and we learn about things that are in that lodge, household things or lodge things, and then, after a year, you come out into the world and the ceiling becomes the sky and the walls become the trees. Like our vocabulary changes. Maybe we have to go back to the basics as the children of fluent speakers.
That makes
Where
sense. Yeah.
there is a block, there's a psychological block, right? And there's a lot of guilt for not speaking and being fluent, especially when our parents are, right? It's like, why can't I do this? And then we carry it. And, I remember being somewhere and there was a Cree speaker, and then I was trying to speak Cree, like I was trying to, and they just started laughing, and I was like, this is not helpful. Like, you really are shaming me right now. You don't think you are, you think it's a joke, but if you want people to speak the language, you can't shame them. You can't be laughing at them, and it just shuts people down. And if we were at this dire place of losing our language, then we have to be better.
Mhm.
We really do.
Yeah.
If care, you know, responsibility to the
Yeah.
language.
And
Mm-hmm.
use the dialect police,
Yep.
because
Yeah.
Anawapiskat has a different dialect than Moose Factory or Moosonee.
Yeah.
Same in my community. Rapid Lake has a different dialect than Kitaganzibi.
Yeah.
You know, and so oh no, that's not the right way to say it. And
But that again, it's like, is this a learned behavior? Is this something from residential school that we have to decolonize the self, decolonize the community, like get out of that mode of thinking where everything is punishable, right? Or shame, 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 shame for trying, shame for this. It's like, oh my God, like we have to get out of that way of thinking because it's not helping.
not a bit. I have a
Anyway,
question for you.
yeah.
This is something that I've come across. When you were saying shaming, I suddenly thought of skirt shaming. You know,
Oh,
when they
that's
say, yeah, you have to wear a skirt to ceremony. Women have to wear skirts because that's our way. And I'm thinking that sounds more Catholic than our way.
right. I feel the exact same way. I feel like when we think about gender, I feel like there's a lot of communities or nations or peoples that have multiple genders, more than male, female, right? And then, because I did a course on indigeneity and gender, and I struggled through it because a lot of the scholarship was new. So it was in response to. And then I was like, I would really love to read something from someone who is a language speaker and then possibly translating into English. So then I get a true sense of how we see gender and gender roles, if that makes sense.
That's
I hardly think 100 years ago, if a woman is a hard ass friggin' hunter trapper, that people who are hungry would be like, you know what? You're a woman. no, you shouldn't go out on the land. Like that makes no sense. We have the instinct to survive, right? So, and the whole thing with skirt shaming too, it's like, I feel like there was such a, we had such a diversity in terms of our understanding of gender. I don't necessarily, for me personally, have a hard time kind of seeing that binary in Indigenous community, especially when you start to learn more and more of the language, right? Like the names, like my sons have names, they all identify as male. They all have names that are non-gendered. They're Cree words, right? And for Asavak, it's a Inuk word. So it's like, and that's not gendered. It means spider. Maegan means wolf. Tapwewan means to speak truth. Pawagan means a dreamer. You know what I mean? Like these are non-gendered roles and then, or names. And then I think about my grandmother, who is a hunter trapper. No one stopped her from providing food for the community. You know what I mean? Because she's a woman. Like, and then my grandfather was like a really incredible beater. He used to beat and sew and be out on the land. So I feel like it's what you're good at as opposed to how you identify. And you're right. It's absolutely, you know, I have these, and I feel like spirit has no eyes. They don't care. They're in spirit form, you know, like they're not gonna, they see your shoulder. They're gonna be like, ooh, you know, like I just like, there's so many, and I guess that's just how my brain works. Sometimes I go to ceremony and I feel really, sometimes I just don't even bother going anymore because I feel like there's so much pressure for me to be something that I'm not. And nobody asks me how I identify. Nobody asks me. They just assume, right? And then for me, it's like, regardless of how I identify or not, I should feel welcomed to a space. Like I remember going to a ceremony and they're like, the men sit there, the women sit there, and I'm like, but why? You know, we're talking about ancestors. They're in spirit form. They're not in body form. They're not going to care about gender and whatever. And I know, and I also wonder about this timeline, right? When we use the word tradition, I know, and I forgot what the word is in Cree. I just talked to a kid in one of my classes, and he said it translates to the way it is. And I said, oh, that's kind of cool. Then I talked to another Indigenous student who said it's like doing something over and over again, tradition, the word. And then I was like, okay. And then I thought, but who deciphers what tradition is? Is it 50 years ago? Is it 100 years ago? You know, is it pre-contact? Like, so that's where I kind of get a little bit iffy when people say, oh, it's tradition. Women have to do this and that. And I'm like, or is that religion? You know, right? Like separating boys from girls. I'm like, that sounds very much like residential school. So I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to kind of unpack, you know, because we don't even need anybody to police us anymore because we're policing ourselves. Ceremony should be open. You can't come, you know, like you're not wearing a skirt. And it's like, okay, he's not wearing a skirt. I don't know.
I've been
It's a
in
lot.
lodges where they have skirts. And when you come in, if you're not wearing one, it's like the skirt basket is right there. Just take a skirt.
Yeah. And what is that? Is it about sexuality or is it being hypersexualized? Is it about covering yourself up? Is it like because, and then you think about that too. It's like what the men can control themselves because they see my shoulder. You know what I mean? Like then we start to unpack what what is the messaging? I went to a powwow, I won't say where, but there was an elder woman. She took the microphone and she shamed the girls that were just there because they were wearing not like short shorts, but they were showing their legs. And she reamed them out. She had the microphone and she goes, "You should not come to a powwow if you're going to show your legs and blah blah." Like, I was just like, this is really problematic. You know, like you are an elder and you're up there shaming half the girls that are here. They're not going to come back. You know, and if they do, they're just not going to feel good about their bodies or themselves. And I don't know, it's very loaded what you brought up, and I know there's a lot of conversation about it. I
Well,
should be ceremony and feel comfortable in going however I choose to go.
that's how I feel. I saw this elder one time, and he was going on about how women can't drum,
Mm-hmm.
and we had children's drums, women's drums, elders' drums, men's drum. We didn't have the big powwow drum, but we everybody else we had drums. And so he got up there and he was saying, and he wasn't in his own territory. And
Mm.
he was going on about how women shouldn't be drumming. There should be no women drumming because there was a women drum group who were there. And so after he spoke, somebody else got up and said, well, and they had a big drum. And he said, well, I'm going to put tobacco on the drum so that, the create and pray for the women who are here that they can drum and that they will be drumming here today. And he put the tobacco down. And that elder ran over and started brushing the tobacco. I know. I'm like, should I film this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's important conversations that need to happen in our communities,
Yeah.
like, why are we doing this to ourselves? Like, this is not how our people are. Like, when I think about grandparents, they honestly did not care. Like, just busy in their own lives trying to survive. They would honestly just they don't care how you identify. They don't care if you're gay. My grandparents just really did not care. So when did it become such a big issue? You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
I don't know. It's just so bizarre to me. Like, is it because it's like part of contemporary culture now? Like, and that's what I mean when I was talking about when I was teaching indigeneity and gender. I just found the scholarship didn't dig deep enough then when I was teaching. I really wanted to read more from people that, kind of did their own work.
Mhm.
Because it's like, no, it's man, woman, it's this, it's that. And like, is it though? You know,
I don't
I'm
think
a tall, strong woman, and there was a whole bunch of women that were sent to go pick medicines. And I said, you know what? That's going to hurt my back. I'm better helping everybody build and lift things because I'm strong. I could do that. And then I went. I went with everybody, like mostly men that were at building and doing an altar and all that kind of stuff. And it was great. But you could see that people were very uncomfortable. And I'm like, but I'm better at that. I'm strong. I can lift things. I can build things. Like that is a strength that I have. But instead of honoring it was honoring me for that strength. It was like shame, right? And that's why you don't want to go back to these places because it's like, why the hell does it matter? Just let people do what they're good at.
exactly. I mean, that's what we did. Like I've been told we didn't have chiefs. I mean, every family had a spokesperson
Yeah.
for the people who the extended families who went on the same trail in the wintertime, that they had a spokesperson. Other than that, it was, well, that guy's really good at making canoes, or maybe that woman is really good at making canoes,
Yeah.
or that one's really good at setting nets, or he's really good at making nets, or she's really good at hunting moose. Like it just whoever, you're right, it was whoever was good. And I remember there was this one guy. He was sometimes the universities get a hold of our people and they kind of put them on a pedestal. And he had all these university types around him, just listening and hanging on every word. And we used to have this camp that we go to. We called it Cocomville
Yeah.
because it was, the little old lady who started it, kind of thing. It was her family, and he was sitting there amongst all these, white academics carrying on. Well, our women, they didn't hunt big game. And I couldn't stand it. I looked at him and I said, who taught you?
Yeah.
Well, who taught him? It was his mother and his grandmother. And who taught you? Who taught you how to hunt big game? Well, there he was like, well, it was my mother. I went with my grandmother. And I was like,
Respect them then.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like don't pull this stoic stereotype and project.
Exactly. Right. And then you have all these academics who they're being misinformed. And then we know how when things are in print, it becomes, that's validated in some way, right? And then that becomes like a misrepresentation of who we are as a people. And that I think that's what I'm saying to you. When the new scholarship, I was like, where is this all coming from? These are people that are reconnecting with community. These are people that have their own lived experience, which is great, but they're kind of looking at gender through the Western lens. That's not necessarily our way of looking at things and women's roles or whatever. I don't know. I have a hard time teaching some courses like that because I'm just like, I feel like everything I'm saying is BS.
No,
You know, like it
no.
doesn't sound like truth because I'm like, well, my grandmother was this, and
Yeah.
why do we always have to be reactionary? Why can't we just be and look at some of our old stories and teachings and pull from that as opposed to in response to colonization, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been teaching a course on the Algonquin presence in this territory. And some of the I started off as a TA in this course, and some, the curriculum was okay, but some of it I'm like, I don't know how I feel about teaching this part, and so I was asking, like, can I want to change this, and they're like, whatever you, it's your course, go ahead, and so I am, because
Good.
I
We
like
make it.
yeah, I've had cultural teachers in community, like women, say to me that they got their teachings about the drum um, later because um, because of residential school and the location of the residential school. It was right in the community, basically, and and she said, "Oh, I respect the drum too much to ever touch it."
Yeah,
And
I
I,
don't means.
like, I would never teach that. Like, I would never. No, no, we
And
have.
it's how you approach certain things, like even having your period. It's like, oh, you can't do this when you, it's like something negative. But then I'm like, why don't you flip that narrative and be like, hey, you know what? We're at a heightened place. Like it's just changing the perspective. Like if everything is like evil and bad, if you touch that, you contaminate this, and it's like, really think about the messaging here. What are you saying to half of our population? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, how are people going to internalize that? Like you can't touch that because it's bad, and it's like, holy, we come from matriarchal societies. Who would teach that?
Oh,
You young women makes no sense, and you're talking
no.
about a person, and I'm like, buddy, like, and I'm also very careful who I called my elders too, right? Because I mean, if I'm not in agreement, I'm like, I don't know, not my elder. And maybe that's a whole article that we have to write, not my elder. But I feel like, it's like, you're right. Like some people that are kind of misinformed or haven't done their own work in terms of healing or decolonizing the self are putting things out there that are very harmful, you know, and kind of leave us in this place where, we're having to break down those barriers within our own community, not just outside of our communities, but within our own communities. That's a lot of emotional labor.
Sure. And I grew
Yeah.
up outside of my community, so there's no way me coming in and saying, "Well, yeah, I think the traditional way of," like.
What is traditional? 50 years, 200? And that's what I always say. Like, when did this tradition start? Where does it come from? Do we know the roots of this teaching? Because if we're going to take medicine from the ground, we're always told to know where those roots are and, the land in which it comes from. The same thing goes with their teachings and, where is it coming from? And we're allowed to question, we're allowed to ask. If we're
Mhm.
going to implement this in our day-to-day lives, then we should be able to ask more about more, information about it, I think. you know
Absolutely. I mean, I was always told, "Be careful who you sweat with," like,
yeah.
you know, and we had some sweat, but we had shaking tent uh,
Mm.
quite a bit, and more so in our community. That's what I've heard. That's what I've seen in
Yeah.
literature reviews and whatever I can find, right? Um, but you know, they did say the same thing about women, but I kind of, in a pragmatic or practical way, if a woman's been on her period for 3 or 4 days and she's lost her blood, she goes into a sweat lodge, like you could faint. Like I probably would, you know. That would just be me, like, oh wow, it's hot
That,
in there.
yeah.
But I don't
But
see it as being a spiritual thing, like I'm bad or I'm evil or I'm contaminating things. Like,
but that's the messaging, right? When we listen to some of these folks, it's like I don't think people fully grasp what it is they're saying sometimes. And there's a Toltec teaching, or Toltec, sorry, there's an Indigenous teaching, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember the root of it, where you have to be mindful of the words that you choose to use, right? Instead of like spewing, blah, and then we have to be very conscious and deliberate with our words. and that is the teaching of language, is that, if you're going to say this is this, then you better have done the background work before you are in a position of authority, like someone who's calling themselves an elder or knowledge keeper. Before they share, they better know where that comes from. Being responsible to the teaching, to the word. I think all of us as Indigenous people kind of have to be mindful of that. Gregory Younging, I don't know if you've read his book.
Love Greg. Oh yeah, God, yeah, absolutely.
When you talk about publications, because just because this is sourced in 5 other texts, it doesn't mean that you have the right to source it again. Maybe stop and think and go back to the root of it and ask permission to see if you got it right. Because, things get changed over time, the more they get sourced in publications. So that's the biggest lesson that I received from Gregory Younging, is also the written word. We have to be mindful of where that knowledge is coming from, pay our respects to the source, right? So, you know,
And I know that some of the people, like Mary, she was a bit of a trickster. She would tell anthropologists stuff.
just
Like,
for this,
yeah.
yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
funny as hell, but I mean, now they think that's true.
But that's the other thing too, is when you think about anthropology and that field of study, is that it wasn't so diverse 100 years ago, and all of this kind of, coming in with under this kind of idea that we're the vanishing other, that we're untouched, like, I don't know, I just feel like that's problematic too. And we have to be really critical about what is written about us. We don't know, like you said, Mary, you should be telling them BS
Oh, yeah.
just because they're listening. We don't know,
Just
right?
to see
So,
their reaction. Oh yeah, you should hear what I told them.
um,
Or you see the stuff that's written. Yeah, I'm trying to think of something that she said that I'm like, oh, geez, Mary. Uh, there was one who kind of cottoned on to my grandmother, and I found the notes on that, but it was so the notes were written with such a Christian lens.
mm,
Like the woman herself wasn't like especially religious or anything, but when analyzing the activities in community, there was this definite Christian lens that overlaid everything. And how many times did that happen? And how many, like even from, they say, unfortunately, some of the best sources are from priests, because they go back further.
yeah.
But that Christian layer is there. Like it's,
Hmm.
you really have to sift to
But I
get.
think that's the work that we have to do if we're academics, is that we're going through all that old material. Instead of focusing on coming up with new concepts and ideas, we're spending a lot of our time correcting and going through stuff and being like, oh my gosh, like, it's our experience in academia is very different than other people's experience in academia, right? Especially as people who've been studied for centuries. So we always have to kind of be critical in our thinking and unpack, and even new scholarship from folks that are, I'm just like, okay, but where are you getting that from? Like, yes, it's great that, how academia is, you got to source, you got to source, you got to source, you got to quote, you got to quote, you got to quote. And I'm like, yeah, but is anybody checking where that's all coming from? you know, so yeah. Hmm. powwows when did powwows come into play? Not that long ago, right? 100 years ago or something. It was a way for us to get together. So that's what I mean. What's tradition and what's not, like, have to kind of be mindful. Powwows, I believe, I don't know how they originated, but I remember doing a paper a long time ago, but that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Remember, it was, anyway,
Yeah, we never did that.
not that long ago. Like, it's not a traditional,
Yeah, we didn't do that. We didn't have grass dancers,
Yeah, I haven't done extensive research in that, but from what I recall,
Yeah. I think
yeah,
we only started in Rapid Lake. They only started maybe 7 or 8 years ago, maybe, to have a powwow.
yeah, yeah. So just interesting, right? To think about all those things. And I think as Native people who are navigating these kind of once Western or colonial spaces, we're always having to just ask questions and think about things and how we approach things. That's what I mean when I say the stakes are higher for us, because we have to think about those things. Am I representing my community? How am I, being accountable? Because there's an obligation, right? So
Absolutely. And Western filmmakers don't have that obligation.
no,
If anything, they have copyright.
yeah,
And I know I don't. Like, that's for me, I'm a steward of stories, but I'm accountable to my community.
yeah. Like I remember, I brought my mom to a screening, and it's a story about, I don't even know if I can say it, but the Wendigo. And then my mom, we watched it a certain season, like I think it was spring, I can't remember. And my mom got really upset. She goes, "Who's this filmmaker? Why are they showing this now? We don't talk about this until this season, or we can, bring this." Like, she goes, "Is this filmmaker native?" And then my mom started questioning, and it's just so interesting because it's like, wow, okay, that is interesting to me as someone who talks about protocol and stuff, that my mom would have such a strong response to a film, to a short film. And then my mom was like, this filmmaker needs to be told that they're being irresponsible. She had a strong reaction because she goes, "I don't want to be here sitting in this theater watching this film. It's not the appropriate time. This person doesn't know what they're talking about." And that's where we're talking about sacred stories and everyday stories. And then we have people that, are not following protocol. And then that has a worldwide kind of audience, right? Thinking that it's okay to kind of engage with these sacred stories through film. And it's like, even as a filmmaker, you have a response to do things right. We don't go inside the sweat, like there's certain things that when you have that lived experience, right? You know better.
Yeah, and the problem being is that, like, for example, there was a goose dance that came from Cree,
Mm-hmm.
from the territory, and it was filmed and it was shown, and then they started doing it in Germany, and they started doing it, so, or someone else who showed these ceremonies, and then they were picked up by other people and appropriated.
Yeah.
And I am terrified that anything I do, like I wouldn't, I to be that conduit for that kind of appropriation, like that terrifies me. I don't know what I do.
I got in a fight with a German woman in Ottawa because there was someone singing a song, and she had her recorder, and I was like, "Do you have permission?" And she was like, "Leave me alone." Like, she was there because she was super fascinated by Indigenous people and culture, that she actually just didn't ask permission. She was just recording. And I had been to Germany, and I was at a film festival, and there was hobbyists everywhere who were dressed in like polyester and cowboys and Indians and long dresses and braids. And I'm like, where am I? What is this? I don't understand what is happening, right? And then later I saw that woman who was like just extracting, taking, right? And then misappropriating, our culture and stuff. And it was just, it's just like, I don't know if the word is misappropriating or appropriating. Is it it's appropriating?
Well, it's
That's the,
both. She's
yeah.
appropriating and misappropriating.
So anyway, it was just a weird thing because I got upset because it was like, you need to ask permission. You can't just be shoving a recorder in someone's face. You didn't ask if you could record. This is an opening song. She's got her drum out. Like, at least be respectful, because I don't know if they're gonna bring that back to Germany and you're gonna see it on their powwows there, So it's, I don't know. I'm just always mindful about that too. Like you're saying, you don't want to be the one responsible, but with media nowadays, people can engage with everything, right? So
I mean, how many times I have asked, you don't record when I'm doing an opening or a closing,
yeah,
you don't record the prayer, and yet I'm saying the prayer and I look,
there's somebody recording.
yeah.
Yeah,
And do I stop the prayer and say, please stop recording? I have, like, but you start getting into these huge gatherings, and it's really a challenge,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
For
especially if the organizers have agreed to it, to say, oh yeah, we want that, even though they've been told no.
I don't know. I feel like this is like the aunties talk. we're, at
We need,
the, we're at the point of our lives now where we're like, we are aunties and
yeah,
we got something to say, and they are, because it's like, like the late Lee Miracle. I love Lee Miracle. You see her in person, but boy, when you pissed her off, you wouldn't want to be in the room. You like she was an auntie. Maria Campbell. Like it's all these strong aunties that have moved into like Kukumhood, but it's just like, it's interesting for me personally to be at that stage in my life where I'm just like, you know what? No, I'm gonna say something, like, or with people that I have a problem with or something. It's just an interesting phase of life to be at where you're like stepping into your power, right? And we have an opinion, and we've been around, so
that's it. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know. It's like, no, we're not doing that anymore.
yeah. And this is why, like, so it's a good place to be. I wish I was young again. Whatever, it is what it is. No, just kidding.
But being an auntie can be fun.
Yeah, it is. It's very right. So
I remember Elenice getting mad at Telefilm. There was this big round table about the language program when it first came out. And they were saying, well, it's only for Indigenous languages. And she was so mad. She goes, because of colonization and the residential schools, English is my Indigenous. And she pounded the table. Like, English is my Indigenous language. Like, you guys take our language away from us and then tell us you'll only fund us if we use our language. Like,
oh yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, oh, you go.
That's what I mean. We're stepping into that, which is a fun time. Yeah.
That's true. And because I can see that in the various films and like the different, I'd love to get a hold of your films. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So just so you know, Wapake is my National Film Board documentary, which I'm hoping that people will access on September 30th. That is on the National Film Board website. So you can access it across Canada.
These children didn't get much love, affection, compassion.
They never had a chance to mature, and that's why they probably faltered as parents. Their children having children.
It's time for the children of residential school survivors to share their truth.
I was an alcoholic by the age of 19, a drug addict by the age of 26.
It was a real challenge being raised by my mom. I remember her crying at night. I became her caretaker too young.
Intergenerational trauma, it's trauma that's carried down from one generation to the next. If nobody breaks that cycle, it will continue.
I really want the next generation to know what had happened in our past, but also I want them to be free of this burden. Wapake means tomorrow. So tomorrow means hope. It means that we have a future. Angela's Shadow, which is my latest scripted work, will be on Hollywood Suite. So that'll be great. So people can access it there. I'm sure it'll be on TV. Broken Angel, and I think was on APTN for a while. So, I mean, my stuff is accessible. CBC Gem has some of my shorter documentaries where I shot in Ottawapiskat, you know. Placenta is on Vimeo. That's a kind of a fun film about the placenta ceremony. It's old now because the twins are 19, but it's a fun little short film. And
I saw your follow up to that.
yeah,
Well, I see it, but I want to see the follow up to that where you did the ceremony.
yeah, that's a Pishquashim, and that is, I hope I said that right. That is on VTape,
Oh, okay.
or the distributor that supports a lot of independent artists. So my stuff is accessible. I feel like I'm hoping more and more people engage. That makes me feel better as a storyteller, as a filmmaker, because you don't make a movie for people not to see.
We'll go through all of that.
Boys, we don't have our website anymore, but ASCII Boys, the TV series that I did, I've got like 5 episodes on Vimeo, so I got to upload the rest.
And what do you have planned?
Well, what do I have planned? I had a few projects I had in mind, but you know, everything's in development right now. It's been a bit slow, so I am teaching this semester at UBC and at Emily Carr, decolonizing and Indigenous theory. So 2 courses that I actually quite enjoy. Yeah, you know, I've got stuff in development, just waiting. You know, it's just, you know how it is. It's feast or famine, right? So I would rather be on a set, but I'm enjoying my students. You know,
I love Emily Carr. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were out there. Beautiful school, and just all that we did a tour, and I was like, wow, the luxury. I would just.
I know, as an artist.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a beautiful space. I mean, yeah.
And just to be able to do nothing but create art. Wow. I gotta figure it out to do that.
Teach at yeah, there might be a position coming up soon. I'm not too sure, but anyway, yeah, lots of fun stuff to do. But yeah, that's it. I mean, I'm working on a comedy. I'm working on some scripts right now, and you know, of course, everything's in discussion, right? So it's just like waiting. But and then once it gets busy, you get busy with 10 projects at once. Like nothing in this field as an artist, but yeah,
It's
happy. Yeah.
Good. And congratulations to your son. That was your old. I think it's your oldest son. He was in that TV series.
Duster on HBO. I know he plays a Navajo FBI agent set in the 70s. So if you haven't watched it, please watch Duster. I'm very, very proud of that kid. You know, that's awesome. Yeah.
I didn't even know. I watched the whole thing. I didn't know it was your son.
Oh, no way. That is so.
And then afterwards, oh, my son and I were crazy over that show. Because I grew up in the 70s, of course, right?
Yeah.
And the collars and the costumes and the props.
Oh, amazing.
I mean, and like it was just so. Even the like the storyline, it was just all so. The world was incredible. They created. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Very proud. They didn't get second season, but you know, I'm still very proud of my boy. Like that's a big deal for a young Native guy, you know. So. Yeah, really proud.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kachimigwich. I love talking to you.
Fun.
Yeah, I don't think I got to half the questions because I went in a different direction. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I mean, it's great. I think it's good to talk about academia too. I think it's important to talk about process. You know, it's important about how we approach our work, right? I think it's just as valid. So yeah, well, thank you. And then people can check out my work online. It's just do a search and check out my Vimeo page, and it's all there. Yeah.
Well, I'll get them to put the title. So there it is.
No, that's great. There's links. I mean, they can just find the names like CBC Gem, and there's stuff on Vimeo and there's stuff on YouTube. So yeah, it's not hard to find. Just throw my name in there in the search. Yeah.
Right on.
Well, thank you. So nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, take care.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Bye for now.